kind of get back to some of the earlier discussions about content delivery channels. I'm wondering if each of you could kind of talk about what delivery channels you use most frequently, and talk about the audiences that you're catering to, and how you match those up.
Within admission, I mean, the focal point is the website, because a lot of students are still finding Emerson College via just web search, specifically about academic majors we offer. We're not a school as big as BU that has name recognition like that. I like to call us a very word of mouth school, where you know somebody that went there, or you have a friend that knows someone that's a faculty member, someone in the industry that works there. So the web is one content channel. Email communication, I always consider a content channel. People tend to ignore a lot now because of stuff you can do on social media, but an email still is way more successful than a Twitter post. We also use student blogs. So we have a WordPress blog running with undergraduate and graduate admission, where we have students blogging about their experience. We also do a Facebook page for the entire university, Twitter account, YouTube channel, Flickr account, and also a LinkedIn group within alumni. So that's sort of our arms out to reach our audiences in a nutshell.
So from an internal communications perspective, we have started a blog for the president, which has been very, very exciting. And so you asked Rick about audiences. What's interesting is that the audience for this blog is everyone, right? So students and probably some parents and certainly alumni, faculty and staff. And so I don't know that we're necessarily catering to all of them, but all of those people want to hear what's on the president's mind, and so it seems to be successful. We also internally are moving toward this sort of internal portal, which was developed, long before I got there, and so I'm interested to see how the internal audience, internal now being students, faculty, and staff, are able to move and use this internal portal. I'm very excited about potentially turning that then into more of an interactive kind of internal news blog, internal news site, but I think that's in the very very far future. And certainly email, I completely agree. Still very effective, and so certainly use that.
We have so many channels. From a marketing communication standpoint, we have our news channel, we have our alumni magazine channel, we have every website has its own blog capability. We have blogs around, PR has their own blog, or they have multiple blogs. Our Dean of Students runs an awesome blog. Everybody I just mentioned is on Facebook, is on Twitter. Some are on LinkedIn. Alumni Relations are on LinkedIn. YouTube. I mean, it's really just keeping track of it all, making sure it's all looking good is tricky. There's so many channels, and we have B Universe, which is our own kind of local YouTube on BU's website. So it's just a matter. Email is still, when emails go out, that's when the numbers are the biggest, and it's not even close. I find my experience has been that people that come through organic searches directly to a website or through Twitter actually spend a lot more time looking at our content than if they come through Facebook. That's just an odd thing that I found. I think it's just the nature of those channels versus Facebook, which is more of a personal thing. Plus, you're always competing against Facebook when you have your content, and then Facebook's, there's all those photos you're gonna look at.
Are you able to
always
determine
something to
if it's
post,
certain types of content on Twitter that draws that increased traffic, more relevant than?
It's not necessarily certain kinds of content as much as it's the way
or information.
It's more about the way you go about bringing it up. If you can spark conversation with your content on Twitter, then it will, then you'll see a greater reward, I find, and you'll get more mentions, or people will take more interest, that's been my experience.
Do you post very similar things on Facebook and Twitter, or do you use them differently for different types of information? One more for events or news stories?
Well, No, I mean, I would say that for the most part, again, there are so many different channels, so I'm trying to determine which avenues I should answer from. But BUs, Jenny, you run BUs, Facebook and Twitter accounts, and I'd say the content that goes on both, it's pretty similar. Twitter's more active because it's easier to just click retweet or to pass on a quick event, whereas Facebook, a Facebook post is a little bit more active. But the content's pretty similar. When you get something to push, you push it.
Yeah.
When there's something,
we try not to post the same thing on both channels at the same time.
Yeah.
And we're lucky that we have enough good content on any given day that I don't have to pick the same piece to share on both channels. But yeah, if we get something that absolutely has to be pushed, then we...
Yeah, I think that the stuff that plays the best, flat out, is not the stuff that you have to push, but it's the stuff that pulls people to it. It's the stuff that when we produce, out of interactive design, for example, something that's so visually awesome that Jenny, it's like I was saying to her the other day, it's like, I dare you not to post that because it's just so awesome. It just gets passed around, and it really just comes right back down to the content and the presentation. And that's the stuff that plays really well across any channel. And it pulls people in to it. It's fine. There's always a position for that, but I think on the web you're really trying to attract people rather than to try to push it into their faces. So I think and that's where value-oriented content comes from. That's where service-oriented content comes from, and that's where really just rockstar visual impact can pay off.
So I wanted to ask. You just mentioned content and presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've noticed about BU, but I'm sure it applies to all of these colleges. Is I'm always impressed with your consistency in design across all your channels. But at what point do you bring your content people to your designers and let the content drive the design? And if you do that, at what point, if any, does the content drive and have a bigger impact on your brand as a whole?
Right. It's very tricky to do that because when you say you're content designers, do you mean our writers or do you mean our web designers?
Your web designers.
Okay, so
at what point do you bring in your content
Yep.
writers, editors, strategy people, and do you introduce them to your designers? Do they meet each other?
Very often, no. Actually, very often, no. But there's a lot of interdepartmental communication between heads of departments. For example, I used to work in editorial, and now I work in interactive design. So I'm constantly going back and forth and talking. And I think it's important to have people that are multidisciplinary and that know people and that have developed relationships and friends across both. It's really tricky to get a writer in a room to make recommendations about a web design. More often than not, I find that they don't know what to say. And a web designer can't say, we need to change this content. And again, that's the value of a content strategist, is that a content strategist could be the overarching voice that says, we need to change this headline, we need to tweak the angle, your presentation needs to match this print presentation, and we need it to really emphasize these words and this,
I mean, I ask this because I'm from the private sector, and we do countless designs where we don't even have content, or it's being developed. It's the classic. Here's an audit. We're gonna start working on it. We need you to make a visual. So we make a visual, guessing most of the time what the content's gonna be or what we hope it's gonna be.
Right.
Never. I mean, when we have content, it's even better. But your consistency, at least from what I've seen at BU, I was surprised and glad to see so much consistency. And there's little elements like being a designer, little elements like on your homepage, there's a call out for an article coming from a certain section. And you don't say learn more, you say this is a video, which is a video link from this section, which is that section's link, and the content is what drives those call outs.
Okay, I can tell you exactly the
how do you make that decision?
That's my process. That's what I do.
How do you make the decision to present that content in that designed way?
Okay, that's decided months in advance based on content schedules. Before it's even written, the idea of including a video into a piece of content is predetermined. And then you got to get your videographer on board. He's got to talk to the writer to make sure that they're not being repetitive in their storytelling, so that they stand alone. So that if that video is shared across the university, or on YouTube or on Boston.com or something like that, it is a standalone piece. And then it's a matter of getting it to the print designer who lays it out, and then working with the print designer and his design. The web designer working with the print designer and his design to create a consistent approach. So I'd say that not everybody always gets in the same room, but it's important to have somebody that does go from one office to another and is there for content. Call them content strategy meetings. They call them production planning meetings. So when somebody says, "Oh, I think I want to write about this research subject," well then, I might say, well, all right, that would really lend itself well to a photo feature. Which photographer? Think about that, and then when do we need this content, and what presentation do we want to do? Do we want to do something traditional that fits a template that we already have established, or do we want to do something that's like full screen, cross-fading, and something fancy? It's impossible to make to make decisions on creativity up front, but you can guide it as it happens, and that's how we do it.